What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to create a fan out animation using Vue and Tailwind CSS. Now I got inspiration from the new email service called Hey, and I was looking at their features and they have this reply later feature where you can group emails together and then reply later. And if you look at the video here, you'll see that it goes in a stack down here, and when you click on it, it fans out. So there you go. So I thought that was cool. And if you have a Mac, you've probably seen this animation in the downloads folder in the dock, and it's the same fan out animation. So I thought it would be cool to try and recreate this using Vue and Tailwind CSS. So here is what we'll be building from scratch. And there is a fan animation there. It's not as polished as what Hey has. For example, if you look here, you'll see that there is a stack of emails, and for us it's just a single button here. But I think this is pretty good after a first pass. So let's go ahead and try to recreate this. Okay, so I have a Vue CLI application scaffolded out here. I've already installed Tailwind CSS, and I have this initial skeleton in place. So I was using Vite and Vue 3 at first, but there's actually a bug with transitions in Vue 3, so we'll stick with Vue CLI and Vue 2. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is make a button here. So we'll have a button here, which will sort of look the same as the cards, but they'll be separate. So a button will toggle the cards. So let's do that. So let's say button, let's make it white. Let's give it a width of 64. Let's give it a shadow. Let's give it a border. Let's make it rounded. And let's give it some paddings, px4 and py4. And let's make it flex items center as well. And let's also give it a hover background colors, bg gray 100. And the first flex item is going to be the image or the avatar. So let's do this. And I'm going to grab it from Faker, say avatar. Okay. And say avatar here. Let's give it a class of rounded full, so it's a circle. And let's give it a width of 10 and a height of 10. Okay, let's see how this looks. Cool. So I sort of want the button to be longer, so we need a custom width here. Let's make 80. And let's go to our Tailwind config and let's add it here. So let's say spacing 80 is what, 20 rems? Okay, let's see if this changes. And it does, cool. And the next flex item is, let's give it a margin left of 4, and then the first one will be semi-bold. And it's just the card name. Say, hey, email invite. And this one will be not semi-bold. Let's make it left aligned. Let's make it slightly lighter. And this one will have the sender's name. So let's add that. Okay, so that looks pretty good for our card. And I'm going to give it a negative margin top so it sort of sits here on the border. So negative margin top 16. And that looks good to me. Okay, now let's work on the actual list of emails. So we're going to make that an unordered list above the button. So let's do that. And let's just work with one for now. It's going to be a link. Okay. And let's make it absolute here. And let's give some spacing in between the elements. Say 2. And let's just see where this is going. Okay, so let's give it a margin top here, or negative margin top. 32. And now I'm going to give the anchor link the same classes as the card here, or mostly the same classes. So I'm putting it on the anchor so the whole thing is clickable. And we don't need this margin top. And let's grab these two flex items as well and paste it in. Okay. And let's bump this up a bit. So we just have to put an inline style here. Just bump it up from the bottom. So 124 pixels. Okay, so that looks good. So now if I just duplicate this a few times, there should be a list here. Say 4 times. And that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to change some of the content here so it looks a bit better. Okay, so I've added some extra content so it looks nicer. And now the next step is to create the fan shape. So what we want to do here is use transform, specifically translate and rotate for each of the cards. So for this one, we'll nudge it over a bit, and then the next one, we'll nudge it over a bit more, and we'll do the same for rotating as well. And then that will give it a fan shape. And you sort of just have to tweak how much you nudge it and how much you rotate it. So let's start with this bottom card here. So that would be all the way down here. And Tailwind has built-in transforms and translates for translating on the x-axis and also rotating. So we can make use of that. So we'll put it on the list item, say transform, and it's translate x. And as you can see, there's different values here. Let me just show you a big one. So you'll see this one nudge over to the right by this many. Okay, so for this one, we only want 1. So it's pretty subtle, but we're going to rotate it as well. And I'm going to do it for each one here. And I've already played around with the values, so I know what looks good. So let me just grab this whole thing. And let's add, this one will be 2. This one will be 4. This one will be 6. This one will be 8. And this one will be 10. And these are all default in Tailwind, but if you want something that's in between these values, you can just add it to your Tailwind config. And we'll do that for rotate. So let's rotate the first one. And rotate only has a few default values, so we have to add it to our Tailwind config for custom values. So if I do rotate, you can see the IntelliSense pop up, and you can see the values here. So if I do 45, this will rotate 45 degrees. So like I said, I've already played around with the values. So I'm going to paste in those values here for rotate. And these are the ones we're going to use, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And again, you can tweak this as much as you want. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to use these here. So I'm going to rotate 2 here. Let me just copy this so I can use it for the other ones. And the next one's going to be 4, and so on and so forth. 6, 8, 10, 12 is what I used, I believe. 6, 8, 10, 12. And for this top card, I'm actually using 16 here. Maybe 14. There's no 14. So I'll just stick with 16, but 14 probably will work better. But now we have a fan shape, which looks pretty good. Again, you can tweak this as much as you like. And this one looks out of place too. I believe I had 10 here. Okay, so that looks a bit better. Okay, now let's add some states so we can show and hide this list. So I am going to add a vShow here, or you can use vIf. I'll stick with vShow. And we'll make a variable called visible. And for the button, we want to click or listen for a click. And let's say visible is not visible. So we'll just toggle it on or off. And here we can add that piece of state. Return visible, say false by default. Okay. Okay, so now it shows and hides. And now let's work on the transition. Okay, so for now, we'll stick with transitioning single elements, so the entire list. And we'll just use the demo in the documentation for a basic fade. So we'll make use of this transition component, and we'll wrap our list in this component. And then we'll add some CSS for the fade transition. So we want to wrap our entire unordered list in this transition component and give it a name. We'll just stick with fade and let's close it out. Okay. And then this transition will kick in whenever this component shows or hides. So now we just have to add the CSS, and it's just a basic fade, so it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to copy this. I am going to add a style script here. I'm going to give it an easing curve, say ease in. And now this should fade in and out as we click. That's too slow for me, so say 0.3. Okay, I'll tweak it later on. But you can see it fading in and out. And I'm going to add another transition so it feels like it's coming in from the bottom. So let's change this to all. And then we'll do transform translate Y. And let's say negative 50 pixels. And now this will feel like it's coming in from the bottom and also fade in. Sorry, translate Y 50 pixels. Okay. And this is fine, but it still feels like it's just one thing that's being animated and we don't really get that fan effect. So to get that effect, we have to have transitions on each of the cards here. So that's what we'll do next. So let's remove this transition from the entire unordered list and we'll add it to each individual list item. So we'll stick with just this one for now and you'll see what I'm talking about. So let's remove this and let's remove the closing transition. Actually, let's just move it up because we're going to put it on this list item here. Okay, and let me just indent this. And we also have to grab the V show and put it on just that list item as well. So let's put it down here. Okay. And now, if I did this right, that transition should only happen for this list item. And it does, cool. And I'm going to comment out the rest of these list items for now so you don't get confused. So I'll just comment that out. And if you look at our transition, you'll see that we still have the fade, but we lost the translate Y. So let me go down here and let me make this more visible so you can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to rotate that 45 degrees and you'll see that it just fades in already rotated 45 degrees. So what we want is for the transition to happen on the rotate as well. So let's do that. So down here where the style is, I'm going to replace this and just do translate. Don't do X and Y at the same time. And both of these will be 0 because this is the starting state. And we also want the starting state for rotate to be 0 degrees as well. And hopefully I did this correctly. Okay, so that doesn't work. I might have to put important on here because the class is taking precedence. So let's try that. Okay. Okay, so now you see the transition happens on the rotate as well, which is what we want. Because once we add this to each card, then that's what will give it the fan effect. So we sort of want it to come up from the bottom as well. So right now it's just starting here. Actually, we'll do that later on. So let's just put this back to what it was before. So rotate 2. And we want to add this transition to each card now. So let's uncomment this. And let's add the transition to each card. So I'm going to add this. I'll do 1 and then I'll do the rest behind the scenes. Let's close it out here. Okay, and we also have to add the V show. So the end state for this card is slightly different, but the transition will happen as well. So there you see it. So I'll do the rest behind the scenes and you'll see the fan animation come to life. Okay, so I've added the transition to each list item for each card. And now we sort of have what we want, but it doesn't really look like a fan effect. It looks like it's just leaning over. So to fix that, we just have to give it a translate Y here, like we had before. So let's say 100 pixels, and this will make it look more like a fan. So let me just refresh this, and let's try again. And that looks much better. And to make this smoother, I think I'm going to make it faster, say 0.15 seconds. And that looks pretty good to me. Cool. So the next thing I want to do is change this list so that it's a loop instead of hard coding the list items here, which is going to be more practical because you're probably getting this information from a backend. So we just have to extract the dynamic information here into an array. And what do we have here? We have an image, we have a subject, we have a sender, and we also have to put this within the dynamic array because it's different for each list item. So we'll add that as well. So if this were real, you'd cap this at a certain amount, and then you'll just put like a more button here, just like how it is for Finder or for the dock here. And you'll see that in the Hey demo as well. So if there's less than, say, 6, then you'll show that. But if there's more, then just show the more button. So I'm just going to paste in that array of dynamic data, and then we'll loop over the data. So let's put it after here. And it's called emails. And like I said, I just added an ID, subject, sender, image, and the classes for this specific card in this specific location. So let's go ahead and start looping over this. So I'm going to delete everything except this last one because we're going to loop over it instead. So let me remove these. Okay. So let's go ahead and loop over it. So we'll do v4 equals, say, email in emails. And I gave it a fake ID, so we can use that for the key. Key equals email ID. Okay. And let's start with those classes. So I'll keep the transform in there because that's the same for each one. But now we'll add this dynamic class binding. And we'll add email.classes is what I named it. Next is the image. So let's just change this to a binding. Okay. And let's change it to email.image. And then we have the subject. So email subject. And then we have the sender. Okay, let's see if I did this correctly. And cool. Okay, I want to quickly add a click away. So if I click off of this, then I want this to hide. So for this, I usually make use of a library called Vue Clickaway. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to grab this. Just grab it from here. Let's go ahead and install it. And let's import it while we're waiting. Let's put it here. Okay. And we also have to use it as a mixin. Okay, put it here. And to use it, all we have to do is make use of this von directive and call a method. So I'm going to put it up here on this div. And let's say hide menu. And let's make a methods key after the data. Okay. Methods, hide menu, this dot visible equals false. Okay, let's see if this works. Refresh, click off of it, and it works. Cool. So there you have it, guys. We successfully recreated this fan animation using Vue and Tailwind CSS. Again, not as polished as what you see in Hey, but I think it's pretty good after a first pass. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.